Hey y'all, let's take a minute to talk about the arrest that happened today. So you may have heard that ICE arrested a judge in Milwaukee, and I think there's some important details that are probably missed by most folks that I just want to highlight. I'm going to start with the difference between the different kinds of warrants and some other procedural stuff, but the point I'm ultimately going to make is this is something that the Nazis did. So a couple of things that are important to know. First of all, in a courtroom or a courthouse, the judges have superior authority over law enforcement. It's not as if law enforcement can just burst in and take over the room. That's not how that works. And this was a county courthouse. So this was the federal government encroaching upon state level business. It's also executive overreach into judicial business. So those are kind of important contours, but I want to be really clear about something. The judge didn't do anything wrong. ICE had what is called an administrative warrant, not a judicial warrant, and they are very different. An administrative warrant is for civil matters like workplace safety violations or food safety investigations. They're issued by a government employee, like in this case, someone at ICE. And you can, by law, absolutely refuse to allow law enforcement to enter or search a private place if all they have is an administrative warrant, and that includes a courthouse. A courthouse is a private regulated place. Judicial warrants are what you think of when you hear arrest warrant. That's something that requires a neutral judge and is backed by probable cause. So a judge actually signed it or a magistrate signed it. And that is for criminal acts. That is for that does genuinely actually allow law enforcement to do arrests, searches, and seizures, and can force their way into private spaces, like non-public courthouse areas. But that's not what ICE had. They only had an administrative warrant, which gave them really no power to do what they were trying to do, to supersede or to overcome what the judge wished. And to be clear, there's been a problem for a long time in courthouses where undocumented folks who are witnesses or victims or perpetrators not showing up to court because it's not a safe place for them to be because ICE might be there. If your best friend was murdered and the only witness was an undocumented immigrant and they were too intimidated to come and speak in court because they didn't want to get deported, how would you feel about that? So this comes on top of years of stuff of federal law enforcement making it harder for judges to do their job and endangering people. And so the judge was rightly pissed that law enforcement, that ICE came in and tried to take over the show, entered essentially the space that she controlled, and she, very legally turned them away. Now, they arrested her on charges that she'll never get convicted on, saying that she obstructed justice. But again, you can't obstruct justice when it comes to an administrative warrant. This is a legally murky area because it hasn't actually been tested. But at the end of the day, she's not going to serve any kind of time. She's not going to be convicted of anything because, strictly speaking, you're not obstructing justice if you're exercising your right to say no. Also important to note, by the way, the undocumented person they were trying to arrest was not even facing the most serious charges. They weren't felony charges. They were like misdemeanor charges. I mean, charges, but misdemeanor charges. Also, it's important to know it is not a crime to be undocumented in the U.S. It is not a criminal matter at all. It's a civil matter, but civil matter is like, a civil courtroom is also where you would go contest a speeding ticket. And in fact, being undocumented in the U.S. is a lot more like having a parking ticket than it is like committing murder or theft. So let's be clear, we're not talking about the righteous deportation of a whole bunch of people who are criminals just because they're here. That's not a thing. That doesn't exist. But all that to say, that happened. The arrest of the judge happened today. And that will unfold in the weeks to come. But the really important thing I want to highlight is that this is something that the Nazis did almost as soon as Hitler took power. So they did a lot of things to intimidate the judiciary, and it did work. Ultimately, they Judges started being removed, intimidated, and arrested. And here are things that the judges were arrested for. They were arrested for things like, and these are the actual charges, being politically unreliable or issuing rulings that don't align with Nazi ideology. So when you see this happening, when you see a federal government that's deliberately embracing authoritarian tactics, clearly attempting to create a fascist state, just notice that this is one of many, many, many other parallels between what's happening here and what happened in Nazi Germany and what has happened in many other places where democracy has died. That is what this is really about. You don't want anybody arresting judges for something like this. You might arrest a judge if they killed someone, but that's a private matter in their private life. So know when you hear about this today and into the weekend and into next week, that the people in the wrong were ICE, and that this judge did nothing wrong. And it should give you pause that this is just one of many tactics that the Nazis and other anti-democracy regimes have used to take power away from the people and enforce authoritarian rule. That's where we're at. So let me know if you have questions about this. If you want to talk about it more, please feel free to leave comments. And stay tuned, because inevitably there will be something for me to go live about any moment now.